Hello, everybody. I hope you had a great, relaxing Thanksgiving and you're ready to sort of tackle out the rest of the semester. So, just so you know, in my mind, we have two assignments left. We have our sectional assignment, which we're going to be starting today, as well as some additional elevational exercise. And then we also will have a final sort of documentation of the photo studio you're working on with Jessica. Now, if you're not in Jessica's class, you'll have to contact me so we can come up with a comparable project for you. There's only a few of you, I think, in that boat, so don't sweat it. Uh, so that's where we're headed. All right, so the first thing I want to do here is just sort of, I'm going to give you two videos for this next assignment. This first one's going to be all about sort of some elevational ideas, and the next one is going to be about section. And we will start. Come on in. Come on in. As usual, the dog makes an appearance right when I'm recording. Love that. So, I'd like to first talk about your last elevation assignment. So, in the next assignment, I'm going to ask you to expand upon the elevations that you've created for assignment 7 in and add a little bit more detail. So, in a typical office, you'll sort of be asked to elevate a structure. Say, hey, Kevin, make the elevations for this project we're working on over here. Here's where I currently am with the design. Okay, so I'm going to start elevating that all up. And maybe a week later, modifications were made. There was meetings, there was design changes, and everything changed. And I'm sort of given the new design, and I have to adjust the elevations to reflect the new design. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do. So in this case here, we have some modifications added to the structure and that you've sort of elevated already. I'm sure you can see the sort of bones of the one that you made. And now you're going to be asked to make the modifications on your elevation drawings and make it reflect this. Okay, so I've sort of started that in a new file. So just like before, I'm going to give you a site plan. Now, before in assignment 7, I gave you a floor plan because we were cut through the 3rd level. In this case, I'm giving you a site plan. So the only difference there is that the cut plane is actually happening in the air above the whole structure. So I'm seeing the roof plane of the top piece right here, and then everything else below it. So, where the railings go and then they start sloping down, for example, here, it's sloping down and so on. So you will get this file just like the last one, and you can sort of set up your CAD file just like you did the last time. So that's what I've done here. Now ignore this for a minute, I'll get to it. I've set up my 4 primary directions for the elevations. Now you can put your old elevation here. Now I would save as, of course, your file. You don't want to save over the work from assignment 7. Just save as, make a new file. So I'm going to do my elevational work here, and I'm going to have my sheet reference the site plan up here because I want to include that in my document set. So I've sort of started out the paging here. So A100 is going to be the site plan at 1/4 inch equals a foot. Okay, and I'll show you, and I'll list all that out in the assignment, and so you'll know exactly what scale to do everything. A200 will be the first page of elevations. So I'm going to have one elevation here and do another elevation here instead of one per page. And A201 will be the next elevations. And then A300 will be the sections, which will be the next video I'm going to talk about. So as you can see, I don't have the title block in here, but this is where your title block would go, or on the bottom, whatever the case may be. And if you can't fit both elevations on one sheet, you could switch and do one per sheet. That's fine. Whatever works for you. So I just want to talk about some stuff I've heard from students from their elevation exercise. I heard this one a lot. Hey, my line weights are in model space, but I'm not seeing them in Paperspace. So if you look here, yeah, I got my line weights are all working here. Now if I go to, by the way, this is the south elevation of the new design. Okay, it's almost complete. There is some missing information on here, but I won't tell you what it is. But this is just about done. A200, yeah, right here, it looks like I have like no line weights, right? Now, if I zoom in a little bit, now I'm starting to see them. So if you're zooming in and you still can't see the line weights, then I would say they all need to be bumped a little bit. So see if you can try to get them so they're at least somewhat visible in Paperspace here, and then give it a print to PDF. You're probably going to do that 2-3 times, and see how it looks. Now you might need to bump it once, might need to tone them back a little bit. You might need the last line weight to sort of, it's too dark or whatever the case may be, but you'll sort of have to trial and error, print it, take a look, print it, take a look, make sure it reads correctly. So the other thing I've added to this elevation is I put a hatch behind everything. Okay, so anything that's sort of like actual structure in elevation, I've put in there. I put a hatch in there. I think that's a nice way to sort of differentiate it from the space surrounding. So you may want to consider adding a hatch. If you want to get really creative with the hatches, you could have 3 different line weights for the hatches from, say, darker. You always want your line weights to read first, but then you could have a darker hatch and then a lighter hatch and a lighter hatch to show what's in front and what's behind. That would be a good exercise to do. But definitely want those line weights to read first. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to point out was that a lot of you had your earth plane sort of ending right at the structure. We want to give the impression that, you know, this earth is everywhere, and this is the structure sort of sitting on that earth. The earth doesn't end right here. By having it extend out a little bit from either side, say the same distance to be clean and precise, it sort of gives the impression that this is sitting on the earth and the earth sort of extends on. So consider adding that. I would definitely add that. 1 second here while I tend to Mr. Wendell. And we're back. It's not annoying at all. Okay. So the new items I want to add in these elevations that we didn't talk about last time were drawing titles. Some of you have sort of added them, which is really helpful, or you kept on sort of my bold kind of work here, especially in your, say, site plan that you referenced on the sheet. So what I've done here, and you'll get this as well, I brought in some typical drawing tags. Now, we're not going to talk about all these, but we're going to use a couple of them. First 2 we're going to use are the first 2 right here. First is the drawing title. So this is what you want to put under each of your drawings. So I'm going to take this one right here. I'm just going to do copy. Okay. And I'm going to position this, somewhere about right here. That looks pretty good. Okay, now the information isn't correct on that yet, but that's fine. So if I go to A200, I can see that in there. All right, so far so good. Now that won't print cyan like that. It'll print a, say, a shade of gray, but that's fine just the way it is. Okay, so I'm going to go back to model space. So I just wanted to illustrate that this set of symbols here is scaled for you to use them for a 1/4 inch drawing. So this is scaled appropriately for this to be put on a sheet at a 1/4 inch. So if you did a different scale than the one I'm going to tell you to use in the assignment, this might look way too big or way too small. This ensures if you do everything at a 1/4 inch, it looks correct. Okay, so this is the south elevation, right? So I'm going to double click on this handy little tool, and I'm going to change some information. I'm going to add south elevation for the drawing name. And then I'm going to click on viewport scale, and I'm going to make that 1/4 inch equals a foot and hit OK. Now this information is correct. Okay, but what about this number right here? What does that mean? Now, this number tells me it's the first drawing on the sheet. So this is 1. So if I go to A200, this will be the first drawing, and then my next elevation down here will be the second drawing. So in model space, I don't need to change the value of this view number yet. I can leave that as 1 because that makes sense. Okay, so what does this numbering refer to? I mean, the south elevation title, the scale, that's really helpful when I'm looking at this sheet. But what, besides it being the first, how else is this number referenced in your drawings? So what you want to be able to do is sort of look at your site plan and be like, hey, I'm on sheet A100. Let's go to that. And I want to look at the south elevation. Where do I go to look at that? How do I know which drawing and which sheet that's on? There's nothing on here that tells me that. Okay, so if I go to model space, what I want to do is add an elevation tag to each side. So my south elevation is going to be the first drawing on A200. So I could go over here and grab a exterior elevation symbol, this guy right here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring him and I'm going to put him about right here, or her, whatever, right here. And right now, the arrow is pointing the wrong way. Okay, so I want to grab this little bar, this little dot here, and I'm going to drag this around. Okay, so this arrow is saying, hey, if you want to look at the elevation right here where this arrow is pointing, go to detail 1 or drawing 1 on sheet on sheet 101 or A101 or whatever I want to put. But we don't have an A101. We have an A200. So I want to change this. I want this to be sheet. The drawing title is 1. That's fine. And I want it to read on A200. Okay, so in order to look at this elevation, I have to go to drawing 1 on sheet A200. I go to sheet A200, there's drawing 1, that's the south elevation. That's how that works. I'm sorry if I explained that a little strange, but we need to add these tags. I need to add these tags around all sides, and I need to add this drawing title under each elevation. So if my next elevation, let me just change my layer, is say right here. I'm going to bring my drawing title over. Okay, and then this is going to be the west elevation. So I'm going to call this west elevation, 1/4 inch. That's going to stay the same. But this is going to be the second drawing on sheet A200. So west elevation here. So I'm going to go to my A200. Here's my viewport for the top one. So I'll just kind of move this viewport in a little bit. It doesn't have to go the whole sheet like a lot of you have been doing. That's fine. Maybe I'll bring this down and I'll move it up a little bit. I'm going to just copy this down. Okay, and I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to move this down. I am holding the middle mouse button to do pan and then holding shift in that order and sliding it over until my west elevation sort of comes into view. Okay, and then I'm going to get out of there. So now I have my south elevation and my west elevation. One thing I might want to do is sort of line up both these viewports so they just sit on the page nice. So I might move this over a little bit. You'll have to sort of play around. Yeah, the boxes don't line up, but it doesn't matter. The boxes aren't going to print, and you're going to have a nice elevation here, a nice elevation here. Their titles are nice and lined up. Okay, so the west elevation is drawing number 2 on sheet A200. So now I'm going to go up to this site plan, and I'm going to grab my detail here, copy it, up here. Now, just so you know, these cardinal directions I put on a no print layer, so don't sweat those. They're not going to print. And I'm going to move my little arrow to the right, and I'm going to change this detail to 2. Okay, so if I go to A100, there, if I want to look at the west elevation, I have to go to drawing 2 on sheet A200. I go to sheet A200, and here's where that would live. Now, right now, I just put an X there to sort of show you, how to go through this, but that's where that elevation would live. So now all my tags are starting to talk to each other. So by the end of this next assignment, you're going to have an A100 with all of your tags sort of laid out around your site plan. You can delete these if you want. You can move them further out of the way in the actual XREF plan. It's up to you, but they won't print because they're on a no print layer. You can double check. No print layer. You're going to have a sheet A100. You're going to have a sheet A200 with 2 elevations, and then you're going to have a sheet, I haven't made it yet, but A201, which would have the other 2 elevations. Now, those can still be details, drawing titles 1 and 2, but they're going to be 1 and 2 on A201. So if I go to my site plan here, these would read, so 1 A200, 2 A200, 1 A201, 2 A201. So they're all pointing to a separate drawing. And then after sheet A201, you're going to have A300, which will be your sections. Okay, so just to show you what is missing from this drawing isn't much, but there is this little bump out here for the railing. It's coming up, going up, and then this railing in the back goes up and it keeps going over. Now that would be, goes up to here, then it goes flat. Now technically, you would most likely see that behind here. So you wouldn't see this sort of gap all the way through. So that was the missing information, but I'm sure you already figured that out. So that would need to be added. So I would have to sort of drag this line up and then, do something like this, trim this out, and then kind of shade that in. But I could figure out exactly where that railing would live from the PDF drawing that I will give you. Okay, so just to recap, I'm going to get another video to you about sections, which is going to be a little complicated. Hopefully not too complicated. And what I really want you to do is take this new design, modify your elevations, and get the drawing titles and the site plan tags in there, and set up a nice little document set of site plan, elevation page, and then we'll add the sections onto that. Okay. Hang in there, guys. We're getting close to the end. I hope you're starting to have some fun with this. If you have any questions about this, please chat me up.